Peter Lawrence is with me today at Le Rivage, and Peter actually won the Tony Award for stage management for Tony Honors while he was stage managing for the production of Annie in 2013. Peter, welcome to secretstobroadway.com and
Thank you.
Luncheon with the Stars.
Well, see, that's no longer a secret now that I
Well,
got the Tony Award,
that's
right?
right.
You've already revealed one.
Absolutely. How are you today?
I couldn't be better. I'm happy to be here with you, and I cannot wait for this meal.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be absolutely super here at Le Rivage. It's a French restaurant, and it's at 340 West 46th Street, otherwise known in the circles of
Restaurant
Broadway
Row.
as Restaurant Row. And Chef Paul is making up a fantastic meal for us this afternoon.
Can I just say how good it smells in this restaurant right now?
Yeah, it's pretty heady.
My mouth is watering right now.
We were just served our appetizers, and we just had the most fantastic round of food. What with the French onion soup with the cheese that was just to die for, to the escargot, which I haven't had in a long time,
Nor
and
have
I
I.
can't remember having anything better. And the pâté was extremely well done.
And the roasted beet salad.
Oh, that beet salad.
With goat cheese?
Great.
Okay, that's fantastic. I'm
Yeah.
kind of swooning here, so we'll get back soon to the theater.
Exactly. Well, here's a segue that we could actually talk about and go right into is I had Terry McCarty on one of our luncheons with the stars, and he was talking about the Belasco Theater and how, it was, he'd never believed in ghosts before, and so he told me about a story that, it was unnerving to him and then to me when I heard it. So I understand that you've had some experiences at the Belasco.
I have, and I am not a believer in ghosts.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those people. But my first Broadway show was called An Almost Perfect Person, and it was at the Belasco, and Colleen Dewhurst was the star.
Oh.
Zoe Caldwell was the director. It was the first show she ever directed.
Wow.
George Hearn and Rex Robbins were the other two.
Yeah.
And anyhow, we're at the Belasco. Now, the Belasco had been ripped apart by the Rocky Horror Show when I went in there. They took down all, because, it's Tiffany
Yes,
glass in the
yes,
ceiling,
yeah.
but under the boxes, which they took out for Rocky Horror Show, the proscenium boxes, there were velours into which were sewn Tiffany glass. And it's just beautiful. But anyhow, it was completely pulled apart by the Rocky Horror Show. So when I went in there, they had just restored the Tiffany glass in the ceiling, and they had just restored all the frescoes on the walls. So we were very impressed to go in there, and I went up into the apartment upstairs to the Belasco apartment.
Yes.
Went through all that, which was pretty ripped up, but you could see, he was very short. He was 5'4", and so I had to
Bishop of Broadway.
Yep, I had to duck under the doorways when I went through because he wanted to be photographed as a normal-sized human being. Anyhow, one night we're having notes on stage, and Zoe Caldwell and I are sitting upstage facing into the audience, and the three actors were sitting downstage facing us upstage, right? So the ambient light from the work lights lit up the auditorium fairly well. So we're having notes, and the auditorium is empty, and I see a woman in a blue dress come in, and she walks across the front of the balcony as if she's looking for her purse. She was looking for something. I didn't know what it was, but this was not an apparition. This was not a floaty thing. This was a woman in a blue dress that looked sort of formalish, right? So we're done with notes, and I go to the doorman, and I say, don't shut off the lights yet because there's somebody in the house. I think it's a woman looking for a person. He said, oh, was she going across the balcony? Yes. Was she in a blue dress? Yes. He said, congratulations, you've seen the ghost. And I said, no, this wasn't a ghost. This was an actual person. He said that Belasco was a notorious ladies' man, as I'm sure you know.
Absolutely.
He had erotic screens up in his apartment. Anyhow, he had a private elevator from the street to go up to his apartment, and one of his mistresses was killed in that elevator. And there is somewhere, I am told, which I haven't seen, a painting of her in a blue dress. But anyhow, the people who have seen that ghost have all seen her in a blue dress, and they all report the same way. If you were to talk to Zoe Caldwell, she would tell you that she saw exactly what I saw.
Wow.
The other weird thing that happened at the Belasco, and by the way, this wasn't creepy in any way. The other thing that happened was we had a party on stage one time. And do you remember the old Polaroid cameras that you pull the film out?
Yeah.
And it had emulsion, and you had to put something on the emulsion to solidify it? So I had an assistant named Bob Brewer, who ended up working for Actors Equity for years after that. And Bob was taking Polaroid photos. So he would take it out, and so he took one out, and he was putting the fixative, starting to put the fixative on. I said, "Peter, come and look at this." So the photograph was, they were about the size of my cell phone.
Right.
The photograph, half of it was, like Colleen and George talking. The other half, it looked like the emulsion had somehow streaked in a way that made it unusable. However, in the streaks of the emulsion was a very clearly recognizable human face. And it was not a face of anybody that any of us had ever seen. It wasn't the face of anybody who was on stage. Bob framed that, and as far as I know, he still has it. I've been out of touch with Bob for years, but Bob Brewer had that. Anyhow, that really kind of freaked us out because we showed it to everybody on stage. I said, "Do you know this? What is this?" But it looked like a face moving at high speed.
Oh my God, that's.
But anyhow,
fantastic.
those are the two experiences I had at the Belasco. Also, you can't take things, as you know, from a theater, because if you take anything from a theater, it's really, really bad luck. But there were these piles of velours into which were sewn Tiffany glass that were just in stacks up in the dressing rooms upstairs. And I wanted to take one so badly, and I started to walk out of the stage door, and I said, "Don't do it." Something just said, "Do not do this." So I took it back up and folded it exactly as it had been and put it back. But there's something about that theater,
Yeah.
that haunted is the wrong word, but there is an apparition in that theater that appears.
We don't know where they come from. I had an experience of seeing the architect for for the Cumston Hall in Monmouth, Maine, where the Theater at Monmouth is. I don't know if you know that theater
I don't.
or not, but I was the first apprentice group in there, with the first equity group that turned that into what is now known as the State Classical Theater of Maine. And we needed to refit the theater and redo everything before we could actually have a repertory theater that summer. So we really worked a lot. We worked hard. We were putting wire into the fittings on the balcony. The great thing about the Monmouth Theater at Monmouth and this theater was that it had beautiful paintings on the ceilings. Angels, cherubs, very Rubenesque, and they were just beautiful. So this guy, while we're doing this and laboring with this task, there's a guy that just showed up in a white suit. He's standing there looking at the ceiling. And we asked, we could feel this, all of a sudden a change. It was like it was just a time warp or something. I don't know what happened, but you could feel a coldness and things started to just manifest on you, And we asked him, said, "Can we help you, sir?" And I started walking towards him. And he looked at me, and as he was looking at me, his body turned past 180 degrees of his neck, so he was almost like an owl.
Oh my God!
So it was like
that's like
just,
The Exorcist all of a sudden.
Exactly. It was just like, but he was like looking at me with this, like a plea of some sort, and then he just moved around and walked through the doors, and that stopped us in our tracks.
I'll bet.
And we were like, "Oh, we got to go find this guy." Well, the theater was locked from the outside. The only way to get in was through the house. That's where we parked our cars in the back and everything. And we didn't see him go through it, and he just vanished.
Love that stuff.
And we found out that it was Harry Cochran, and Harry is buried right next door in the cemetery. And what's weird is that here's the theater, and his family lays like this, but he lays like that, so his face, his headstone faces the theater. And we went back, was it 2012? By the way, ladies and gentlemen, my wife is on the other side of the camera, Kathleen Calais. And we went back there to show the kids where the old man started. And the artistic director then was showing us around, and I had mentioned Harry Cochran's ghost, and he says, "Oh yeah, Harry comes around all the time."
Really?
You know, once anything is disturbed as far as their creation or something of that nature, it gives them pause or wants to make sure that it's being taken care of, or it's sort of a
Love
protection
that.
kind of thing, and he doesn't have to travel far because he's right there. Peter Lawrence is my guest today at Luncheon with the Stars at the beautiful Le Rivage restaurant on West 46th Street, Restaurant Row in the heart of Manhattan. And we have had an absolutely fantastic meal here at Le Rivage.
Before we talk about anything else, could I just say the venison, if anybody comes here, do not,
Miss
under
that.
any circumstances, miss the venison. It is unbelievably good.
And my beef bourguignon was absolutely, quintessentially the best I've ever had. And I believe that my wife had the trout, which was flaky and just sumptuous. Thank you so much, Le Rivage.
And we're not leaving.
And we're not leaving.
Promotional consideration for this portion of SecretsToBroadway.com furnished by Le Rivage, offering you a cozy, romantic French country atmosphere with traditional French cuisine. See Chef Paul, where the breathtaking art complements an amazing meal. Le Rivage, 340 West 46th Street, between 8th and 9th Avenues in New York. 212-765-7374.